And with that, we move on to the second half of the podcast here, Wickett on Wisconsin, and we welcome in Jake Morley. Follow him on Twitter at Jacob Morley from PackerReport.com and about a dozen other Packer sites and podcasts. And Jacob, have you slept? Because I know your Packers draft preview takes like 10 months to put together. Then the draft happens. Now the draft is in kind of the rearview mirror. Have you slept a lot since the draft went down?
I slept like a baby since the draft went down. We were just talking about that, how it's a lot of work. It's a passion project. It's something I love doing. I love hanging out with my pals doing it. But man, when it's over, like I know my good buddy Kent Swanson always takes like a vacation. Like when it's done, he just like him and his wife and kids, they just get out of town for like a long weekend, and they just kind of you spend the time with your family that you just haven't really seen them, at all that weekend. My fiance, had to tell her, this is so the
Time
third,
out.
third, third.
Time out, honey. We can't talk right now. Not till we get to the
Oh,
beginning of May.
well, and even that weekend too, like night one, hopping on shows. I'm on Twitter. I'm doing this and that. And so this is our third draft that we've been together. So she knows the drill, and she just kind of knows, like, all right, see you Monday. and that's just kind of how it is. And she's great about it. So it was a lot of fun, but it's the relaxation, the Zen part of the process is now.
Well, I drink beer when we do these podcasts. I didn't the first half because I recorded it around noon, so I didn't think that would be terribly appropriate, having to take care of my kids. But this beer is for you, and I say that, Jake, because you opened my brain. Now, you were on for one of the podcasts, the draft previews that I did earlier, and if you want to check it out, wisportsheroics.com. I have it on all the socials at Mike Wickett. Because when I was thinking Packers wide receiver, I was thinking your traditional, who can they get that can come in and step in and catch 60, 70 balls, maybe 8, 9 touchdowns? Who's the Jamar Chase? And after my conversation with you, and then I started watching and reading more about Christian Watson, a guy that you covered, a guy that you have, talked to, a guy that you are all about. After the podcast last time you were on, I was like, let's check that. This makes a ton more sense than Jameson or Olave or Treylon Burks or any of that. So for opening my brain for a different concept, that's what I love about these podcasts. I can learn a hell of a lot. A run-blocking wide receiver jumped to the front of my Packers wish list, and apparently theirs on day 2. So cheers to you for opening my brain.
Well, cheers indeed. Cheers indeed. Yeah, he, I thinking back to just kind of covering him and knowing who he is for the last several years, really. And, he walked onto campus at NDSU as just a scrawny athletic kid that they somehow all these, major programs missed. And it happens, it happened a couple of years ago. Trey Lance, same program. North Dakota State's really good at finding these guys and developing them. And Christian Watson's kind of the next one, but we knew he was an alien type athlete. And we know that he is a run blocker. We know that he is a guy that is going to put his face mask into yours, and he's not going to stop moving his legs until your back is on the ground. Like that's his mentality in the run game. But then you combine all of that with the fact he's an alien type athlete. I mean, when you talk about as far as his athletic tools, there's nothing he can't do. There's nothing he cannot learn how to do in this league. It's similar to when they took Rashawn Gary and you looked at his athletic profile and you said, well, what's his upside? What's the best version of Rashawn Gary? And it's really good because there's not guys like either of them just walking around. So if both of these guys can realize their potential, if Christian Watson can realize that potential that he has in that 6'4", 210-pound frame that moves similar to a guy like Calvin Austin from Memphis, who is a 5'7" guy that people were freaking out about because he was so explosive. I mean, that's Christian Watson is the same type of athlete as that, but he's just in a much larger, athletic profile package. Like everything about him is just bigger. It's wild to say. And I think it was back in November when he started people started kind of realizing who he was. And I just wanted to get ahead of it and just say, hey, he's a Packer receiver.
The
Like
pinned
it's
tweet from Jacob, and I saw this on your Twitter page over the last few weeks. Christian Watson is such a Green Bay wide receiver. That's a pinned tweet, not from March or February, but from last November. So was that when you looked at him and the light went on for you?
I think that's when the light went on as far as like this guy legitimately is going to go top 100, and that's when, in my mind, I kind of always was curious what other people would think about him once they watched him, because like I'll fully admit, because I cover NDSU, I see them through a different lens sometimes, and so like I'm always very careful with how I view those guys. And I do lean on some of my other, pals' opinions about them. But that's kind of when other people started approaching me. They're like, yo, who's this kid? And you're kind of like, oh, that's Christian Watson. This is who he is. This is what he's about. And so when those other people kind of start stirring that up a little bit, that's kind of when I started leaning in and being like, yeah, and the match, the pairing too. Like, this is the Packers. This was before they even traded Davante Adams, and before they needed to desperately go get a wide receiver. So I'm thinking anyways, like, he's probably going to go in the second round. He'd be a great pickup for them at that spot, and he'd be great next to Davante Adams. That was before the combine, before the Senior Bowl, when he kind of just shot through the roof. And that's kind of the thing with him now that people are starting to say is like, well, level of competition. They didn't ask him, to run a wide variety of routes, all this stuff. And like, those are the concerns. I get that. I'm not saying those aren't concerns, because they are. Like, if you're going to knock him and say, well, why didn't he go higher? Well, he went 34. He went pretty dang high.
Pretty damn high, man.
And
60 some picks.
And exactly. And secondly, I think you go watch that Senior Bowl stuff, and Milt Hendrickson even said that today. He's one of the head generals in Green Bay. Just said that Senior Bowl week against that level of competition that he played against. Oh, and by the way, those guys all got drafted. Oh, and by the way, those guys all voted him the best wide receiver that was there that week. And so those guys, basically seeing him live and in person, said, this guy's a dude. I'm sick of guarding him. He's making me look silly. And now that's coming to Green Bay. And that's kind of the thing with him too, is and the thing you do need to understand about Watson, where he's coming from, that NDSU offense. My buddy, I was talking to Ross Uglum, who covers the Bison as well, and just talking to him, and we were kind of going back and forth. And it's like, they threw the ball 1,000 times in his 4-year career. And to put that in perspective, some college programs throw the ball 500 times a year in one season. So they don't throw the ball. And Zach Cruz actually tweeted out something today talking about his yards per route were, I think it was like 4.3. And then he listed Drake London. He listed Chris Olave. He listed Jamison Williams. The next closest guy was like 3.3. So you kind of bottle down that production and say, well, shoot, what if he would have played at a bigger program where they did throw the ball? And speaking of a bigger program, I think it's okay to say this, but I do know that Notre Dame was hot to trot after Christian Watson this last year. They wanted him to transfer there bad. And he ultimately stayed at North Dakota State and finished there. But it's not to say, like, man, there are D1 programs, big time programs, that recognized who this kid was and said, we want you to play for us. Come play for us. And, he did. He stayed at NDSU, and I think that was a good choice for him because he ended up going top 40. But, it is interesting, though, and my neck is out on the table, too, for this guy.
Oh,
and
yeah,
I'm ready for it.
I know.
I'm ready for it.
I came in late. I'm not going to lie, but I was texting with buddies and tweeting on draft night. I'm like, there was another podcast I did with somebody else about the draft. I'm like, I want him at 22 because listening to you and watching everything and reading up on him and just thinking about LaFleur's offense and what it'll look like without Davante Adams. They add Watkins. They've got Lazard. Both are great run-blocking wide receivers. Like, this is a perfect fit. And I was very excited because I remember chatting with you about it. I'm like, gosh, this is just something different, that Kyle Shanahan-like offense, but with a stud quarterback, which we don't see very often.
Mm-hmm. And this is the next evolution of Matt LaFleur's offense, right?
Yeah.
No Davante. Nobody out there that you can kind of look at in 3rd and 7 and say, well, I'm just going to trust that guy to win, which is great to have. Don't get me wrong. But also, it's great to play within a scheme that you can say, well, I've got four options here. I like this matchup over here right now, and that's kind of what we've seen from Aaron Rodgers in the games without Devontae. Is it's always been someone else that stepped up. Like there was the Robert Tunyon game, there was the Aaron Jones game, you could call it the Randall Cobb game last year against Arizona when everybody was out. He caught 2 touchdowns. So guys tend to step up, and I think they do a better job of saying, where can we attack teams? And I think with Watson and all the other pieces that they have now, that's how it's going to be this year. It's going to be a week to week thing where it's like, man, Watson might go off and flash 8 catches for 120 yards one week and then have 2 catches the next 2 weeks. But maybe Dubs is stepping up, maybe Sammy Watkins is stepping up. I don't know. I don't think they have a true alpha number one this year. And I'm not sure Watson will be that this year. I think he will be, and he can be, because we talked about it earlier. Sky's the limit with this kid. Like he really don't put a cap on him, because freaks of nature like him do not come around. You look at his athletic comps. I mean, there are guys on the list like Calvin Johnson, Javon Walker, Andre Johnson. I mean, names. And then there's also other guys on there that you're probably like, who the heck is that? Just freaky athletes. But that's kind of what you're rolling the dice with. And all of the high picks, the guys with actually good tape in college, have been great players in the NFL. And Christian Watson has great tape. And you just go watch him at NDSU. And the thing I'll say about him too that got me excited as well, I was kind of like Milt Hendrickson when he went to the Senior Bowl and he started showing some of those routes that he was running. That's when I got real excited for him. And it wasn't just like he'd be a nice fit for Green Bay. That's, for me, that's when it turned into I want him in Green Bay. I want him. I want them to go out and get him, because I think he can be and will be special in this offense. I mean, for someone that's as big as him, football is a complex game, but it's not, it really does boil down to, if you are bigger, faster, stronger than someone, that doesn't always translate to being the best, but it sure helps. And Christian Watson, the way he moves and the way he was showing the nuance in his routes at the Senior Bowl, that was something that blew me away, because that was not something we saw at North Dakota State, because they didn't really ask him to do that. So it was almost like him kind of just saying at the Senior Bowl, hey guys, I can do this stuff. I can do this stuff too. And the thing that I think that I find interesting that we will need to talk about, and it will, and I promise you it will be a storyline at some point, is who's Aaron Rodgers like the most. And Aaron Rodgers, the way he plays this game of football is at a different level intellectually, and love it or hate it. And I know it rubs some people the wrong way, because he legit thinks he's the smartest guy in the room wherever he goes. But I promise you, when it comes to the game of football, he is the smartest guy in the room. So you need to be in the same ballpark as him when you're on the field with him. And you need to be able to look at a coverage and say, okay, they're in a too high, whatever. This is my route concept. Does Aaron knows that? Aaron damn well knows that. But can Aaron look at his wide receivers and say, okay, I actually need him to run, a 9-step instead of a 7-step, because that's where the gap is going to be. That's where I'm going to fit this ball into that window. And can he get on the same page with those guys quickly? And that is who I think is going to get the most, production their rookie year. And the thing with Watson, and I said this earlier, Darius Shepard was another kid from NDSU. And he did not have the athletic makeup to be an NFL player. Like, he just didn't. But he stuck around in the NFL because of how bright he was, because of how well North Dakota State got him prepared to play in the NFL, and because 12 loved him, because that was a guy that he's just like, man, I know that what's going on. And Watson comes from the same program. His coaches talk about his intelligence in the same light. I think he's going to pick things up really quickly. I think Rodgers is going to love him. Also, I think Rodgers already loves him. I think, and that's what is interesting to me too, is do they trade up? Because, and don't get me wrong, they lost that trade as far as value. they had to pay. They had to overpay to go up and get him. I don't know if they do that without Goody and LaFleur saying, "Hey, Aaron, you like this kid? Do you like this kid? Like, have you watched him? Because if you're going to talk about wanting to be involved in this stuff, we're going to trust that you've watched these guys. And if you've watched this kid and you like him and you believe in him, we'll go up and get him."
I
I
agree with that.
promise you, I
I agree
promise
with
you, he
that.
was involved in that conversation.
I don't think
Especially
LaFleur. I don't think LaFleur was watching the Pat McAfee show, thinking, we need to call Aaron." I bet he already knew,
right,
or at least as
yeah,
soon as that 28th pick went off the board, they started getting on the horn with Aaron when he hung up with McAfee to get his
yeah.
approval on a guy like Watson.
And and Aaron kind of alluded to that on the McAfee show, like when he talked about, well, I think they have 6 first-round grades on guys. I bet Watson was one of them. And that's the thing. So like that should, there's your clue, there's your hint. Yeah, he knows what's going on in there. He is involved, and they've all talked about how that relationship is at a really good spot right now. So why wouldn't he know? Why would he be in the dark at all on that? I would imagine he was pretty involved in signing off on what receiver he wants to work with what receiver he wants to be his next dude.
I want to fire off a little bit about the profile of Christian Watson, who you watch play so much. Is he a 50-50 ball guy? Did he have those kinds of opportunities in an offense that ran the ball 60-65% of the time?
He can be. Yeah, and that's the thing. He can be whatever. The thing with Watson is he's more, I would classify him more as a separator, with his ability to kind of create space with how big he is and how he moves. And that's my number one thing in a wide receiver is, can you get open? And do I have to get creative in how you get open? If I have to think too hard about how you're going to get open, I don't want it. Right. And Christian Watson, you don't have to think that hard about when you watch the way he moves. You look at a guy that's like, man, you can be an elite route runner, you can be an elite separator, but also he showed the ability, yes, to go up and just out athlete people, just out athlete kids at the point of attack, and be able to go up and be that 50-50 guy if need be. If it is the back corner of the end zone and he needs to go above somebody and get his toes down, like he can be that guy. And that's kind of the thing that you love about him is he can be all that. He can do all those things.
Watching Devontae Adams' footwork at the line of scrimmage was often like watching Fred Astaire dance. It was like, wow, this guy is just unreal. What is Christian Watson's footwork like, especially right off the line?
I don't think we're ever going to see another Devontae. Like, right. So he's not that. He's not that. No one is. But as far as Watson in the 6'4" bot package that he is, his footwork at the line of scrimmage is good. It's borderline special when you look at just his start to stop, his ability to get skinny at the line of scrimmage. Everything these receivers do at the line of scrimmage, especially like in these release packages when guys are trying to slow them down, alter their route, everything starts from the ground up. It starts with your feet up. And I think he does a really good job of marrying his hands with his feet. So maybe he's giving a jab swipe and getting into his slant or whatever. But I think as far as someone that is going to see now more press packages at the line of scrimmage, I think like most, young receivers, that's going to be something that he's going to have to overcome. And it's something that I think he absolutely can. And I think he can do it early.
You mentioned the different routes he had learned to run seemingly for the Senior Bowl. How does that, and forgive me, maybe this is the novice in me, but routes at North Dakota State, routes at the Senior Bowl, but then the complexity of a Matt LaFleur NFL offense. You know him. You've talked to him. You talk about his football IQ. Does he make the jump quickly, or is this something that we might not see him fully grasp that chemistry and where to be until maybe his sophomore year in the NFL?
I think we're going to see spurts and flashes of a really good football player this year. But I do think like the takeover, the dominant wide receiver one stuff, I would bank more on that being year 2.
Okay.
And I think they're going to kind of piece it together this first year.
Will your message boards light on fire if he's not Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson in year 1?
Shoot, man, he still might be. Who knows? Because we didn't expect that out of Jefferson either.
And Jamar Chase couldn't catch out of camp. Remember, he was unable to catch the football during preseason.
Oh, those pesky white lines, right? Those pesky white stripes. Yeah. So I think I think he can be a really productive rookie. I just think it's not fair to put that on any rookie to come in and kind of be like, hey, can you be that alpha number one? So I think it's going to be more year two. But I think, going back to like the route concepts within Matt LaFleur's system, the thing about Matt LaFleur's system is it doesn't always require you to be an excellent route runner. I mean, they run a lot of mesh concepts. They run a lot of crossing concepts, which is basically, you know, what it sounds like. It's can you get off on can you get a pick and can you create some space and can you catch the ball at 8 yards depth and then just go outrun some people for 20 yards. That's what they like to get guys in. So that's what I think they'll do, especially with all these young athletic receivers now. I mean, they legit just took 3 guys that they could have used in the worst way last year against San Francisco when MVS went down, and they did not have that guy. That is when he's on the field, you say, oh shoot, we can't just squat on every single route. We actually need to respect this guy. They have dudes that can do that now. And I think with Watson, the easy and I would almost say lazy comp for him is MVS. And I would caution people, just because he's going to be able to do what MVS did does not mean that's who he is. Right. I think early in his career, he can be a very useful player in the same capacity of a Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who is a very good football player. Like, don't get me wrong. He just got paid to be a good football player for a good football team. So if Watson can come and be that in year one, I think we're really happy about that. I think we're thrilled. But I also think he's going to be a manufactured touch type guy. I think those tunnel screens that they love to run for Devontae, now you can run those with Watson. Just get him the ball. And a lot of it is what Packers fans talk themselves into for Treylon Burks is what they're going to do with Christian Watson early. Because Treylon Burks doesn't run routes. Like, he just didn't. And Watson at least showed us that at the Senior Bowl, he's always had that in his back pocket. I mean, NDSU's offense, though, was run, throw Watson the ball in the flats, throw Watson a 50-yard ball. Like, that was their offense, and they don't lose. They beat the pants off of people by doing that. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly he can develop into this offense.
Is he a guy that you can see in last year's Deebo Samuel role? Line him up all over the field. Will he line up in the backfield? Will he line up on the outside, inside, all over? Is that something we might see down the road?
We'll see. I made the comment one time and I got a little bit of pushback on that because I think he's the closest comp to Deebo in this year's draft class for wide receivers. And I know some people are like, everybody says everybody's Deebo, and like, that's kind of true. Like, that's fair. That's fair to say that there's a lot of people out there being like, oh, like, this guy's like Deebo. And the thing is, I think the 2 closest guys that you can make that kind of comp with is Burks and Watson, because of the way, like, how big they are, one, and how creative they are with the ball in their hands. They both see the field really well. Deebo does the same thing. So to answer your question, yeah, like, I could 100% see them running Watson all over the formation, kind of being that guy that's moving all over the place and, having to make teams honest with that jet motion, which is something last year the Packers hardly ran at all. And if you go back the year before, Tyler Irving was just good enough at that jet motion to make linebackers kind of stay on their heels and be like, oh man, they still might give it to them. And if they do, that could be a problem. They didn't really have anyone last year that linebackers had to look at like, okay, Lazard's doing this jet motion. Cool. Give him the ball. I don't care. Like, we'll go tackle him for 3 yards. But now with Watson, when he goes in motion, he's better. He's going to be better than Tyler Irving. He's going to put fear into defenses that if he has the ball in his hands, like, that is something we need to account for, because if we are not accounting for him going into that type of jet motion, we're going to get burned. It's going to happen. So, in the NFL, one half false step from a linebacker is sometimes what NFL offenses pray for, because that's all they need. And because it's just that hard to move the ball at this level with the type of intelligence and athleticism that these defenders have. So if you can make them hesitate for a half of a second, that might open up something for, Cobb or Lazard or whoever, on the back end or on the other side of the field. So that is exactly what I think they're going to want.
I don't know if you can see the schematic that I drew up, and if you're just listening to the podcast, you can't see it, but I've drawn up a play where Watson lines up in the backfield, motions out to the left side. Over here, we've got Watkins on the outside along with Lazard and Cobb, and then a jet sweep coming straight across, because that's what I can see Christian Watson doing when you have Watkins and Lazard, two of the 5 best blocking wide receivers in the NFL, over there figuring out a way. I just think that the creativity here with a jet sweep, motion stuff, fake pitches to running backs, and then here comes Watson coming blazing up I'm so excited to see, and I'm trying not to get ahead of myself, but I'm very excited to see what he can do. And I know guys that look at film the way that you look at film, and the all-22, you are as well.
Man, I feel like I'm on ESPN right now with those types of graphics and analytics.
Right. This is really good. This is a piece of paper where I just drew with my chicken scratch.
Don't let the haters see that. They're going to steal your play from you.
Somebody call the Vikings. This is what they're going to run.
Vikings don't have the personnel, because you're right. Like, the whole thing with getting those guys in space is, and in this offense, is you have to be able to block on the outside for Matt LaFleur. Those are Matt LaFleur type guys, and that is pretty much what initially made you think, wow, this Christian Watson guy would be really good in this system. Mm-hmm. And the other thing, like in the past, MVS wasn't a terrible blocker. He got it done. Like, he did an okay job for what they asked him to do, but there was a big enough discrepancy between him and like Lazard and EQ that you could kind of be predictive of what the Packers were doing with their personnel packages. With Lazard, Watkins, and Watson, they can keep those 3 on the field, and they can mash the ball if they want to. Watkins and Watson are both legit blazers and deep threats. They can hit you over the top. And then a guy like Lazard is, with those 2 guys, he can absolutely eat over the middle of the field, basically playing. I mean, Lazard basically played tight end for them last year. I don't think a lot of people realize that. People are like, why don't they move him to tight end? Why don't they move him to tight? Well, he pretty much is a big slot
and they've got
tight end.
3 they like in DeGuara, Tunyon, and the big dog. So like, they already have enough tight ends. I know people are like, why didn't they draft a tight end? Why did they bring in a tight end? They have 3 they like. Now, that doesn't mean they have 3 great ones, but they have 3 they like. So keep Lazard where he is.
And this is way off topic, but unprompted, Goody brought up Tyler Davis, the kid from Georgia Tech that they had that flashed a few times last year and kind of made you raise your eyebrows. He did drop a Jordan Love touchdown pass in the Detroit game, so I haven't forgave him for that. But I did think that was interesting that Goody brought him up unprompted. So I was like, oh, and you don't know if that's coach speak, if they're like, oh, we didn't get a tight end because we like this guy a lot. And it's maybe just like, oh God, we really wanted to get a tight end, but it just didn't fall that way, So, I mean, you never really know. But yeah, to your point, like they are going to be able to run guys out and do a lot of different things that are going to be a lot of fun. The illusion of oh my God, I always struggle to say this. The illusion of complexity. I have to slow myself down, but that is Matt LaFleur's offense in a nutshell. We want you when we're zigging, we want you to think we're going to zag and opposite. And we want to be able to do whatever we can do. We want to be able to run our full gamut of offense with the same guys on the field. And each year they kind of get closer to being able to do that. Watson and Dobbs, whatever his name, Romeo, those are both guys that I think are going to fit into that as well. So it's going to be a fun season. Man.
It really is an X's and O's versus Jimmy and Joe's thing with LaFleur's offense, and you see it a lot. I just have a couple more for you because you watch Watson play so much. The biggest concern people have, besides the competition thing and they took him at 34, not 32, so Rodgers doesn't get a first rounder, whatever. His drop rate. He does tend to drop the football. How much of that is on placement from his quarterback? How much of that is on him feeling pressure as the alpha at North Dakota State? And how much of that is just something that he's not good at right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to make excuses for him. Like, he needs to get better at catching the ball, and that's a real thing. And some people will tell you they don't care. It's like, hey, the difference between a guy with the best hands in the league and a guy that struggles with drops is like 5 to 8 plays in a season. And if they're not like at massive moments, like it seemed like MVS every time he dropped the ball, it was like when they needed him to catch it the most.
Yep.
And so, and that's the thing. But the thing I will say with Watson is he's got natural hands. Like there's nothing wrong with the way, the way he tries to catch the ball. There's nothing wrong with his fundamentals or his mechanics of the way he attacks the football. I think sometimes he just focus drops. Like, so there are times where just look that thing in all the way. And a lot of people will mention, Jordy Nelson struggled with drops early in his career. James Jones struggled with drops.
They all do.
Devontae Adams struggled mightily with drops early in his career. But the thing with all of those guys is none of them ever really fought the football when they tried to catch it. MVS, I always had more worries about because he wasn't as natural of a catcher of the football. He didn't track the ball as well as these guys do. So with Watson, I think it's just a matter of let's get him in here and let's just get that volume up and let's just get him comfortable. And a lot of times that's all it is with catching the ball is, man, I've been catching the ball really well this season and I don't have to think about it. When you start thinking about it, it's just like anything, that's when it gets rough. But it's not nothing to worry about. That's for sure. And he needs to get better at it. But I just think he will.
Is he a good dude?
Yeah. Great dude. So one thing and so Ross Uglum is like the publisher of Bison Report. And so Ross is actually really close with these dudes. And just hearing him even talk today, and I've talked to him off the record about this, just how throughout his career, Coach Entz at NDSU will rave about this kid. And NDSU is a program that gets a bunch of cast-offs from Wisconsin, gets a bunch of cast-offs from Minnesota. They recruit the Kansas City area really well. And, guys that just miss out on those big programs. So they get these kids that come in with these chips on their shoulder and they get grinders. They get really, really high IQ type guys. And Coach Entz is, when he talks about Christian Watson, he's almost like he gets choked up. Because he just loves the kid that much. And I think Packers fans are going to really endear themselves to him and him to them, just because I think he's a kid that just loves ball as well. He just wants to play football. He just seems like, on the field, off the field, he's Packer people. Really, really nice kid, really respectful. Always yes or no sort of type guy. Likes to have fun. Teammates love him. You get I follow a lot of these guys at NDSU and have for a while, and their reaction to when he got drafted was fun as well. Just his teammates going nuts that he's going to Green Bay, that he went pick 34. So he's a good dude. I think fans are just really going to like him.
You can follow Jacob on Twitter at Jacob Morley. Read him at PackerReport.com. And if you go to his Twitter page, the 12 other places you can read his Packer content or get his Packer content. He followed and covered Christian Watson at North Dakota State, part of Bison Report. I know he's not going to be too worried about the cold weather because I saw him dancing like Jamal Williams, Jacob. So I think we're going to be all good there. Thank you for coming on again. Congrats on hitting your dart at the bullseye when you threw it back in November for the Green Bay Packers and taking this victory lap with me.
All right. Thanks for having me on, Mike.
Anytime. He's Jacob Morley. That is Wickett on Wisconsin for the week. We will do it again coming up next week. As always, go Pack, go Bucks, and go Brewers.